mfumu mwena mushinsero bakamba nchirinde wera mwera wanse bakamba kakupikoka apa kakupuka kupika paka kupikoka apa kakupuka bye pantu ganari fekuru kunge mbaza ripakona thanks kuwa fiashiri life icona
the queen of Zambian hip hop
numero uno lyrical sensei
monga mapo moti madimba sindine na katindi bati inenima wina.
You ain't never heard a flow like this. It's bittersweet like a Judas kiss.
Chilulemba.
Fans are like church, how they testify. I don't stand out, you have to point to identify.
But you can call me Shimasta.
I discovered hip-hop way back in 1989 after listening to Run DMC. I come from a home where my sisters used to listen to 90s and 80s, the oldies. And so when I heard King of Rock, it just blew my mind. And from that very moment, I fell in love with hip-hop.
Back in the days, what we called a boombox, it was a tape deck. And you would carry it on the streets and you go sit by the corner. All the girls would come and hang around with you because you're playing a tape of hip-hop and it was just going on.
I watched Breakin' or Breakdance, the movie, because there was a scene in which Ice-T shows up and the whole movie is about breakdance. The fad was all over, the world. And we were not exempt to it in Zambia. But when Ice-T stepped up and rapped, I was like, what is this?
And we'd sit back and listen to LL Cool J, Run DMC, Fresh Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and all those guys. We would listen to them. But my reckoning of changing hip-hop, when I heard Public Enemy come on the scene, and these guys were conscious and were like, don't believe the hype. And I was like, this is good music.
I discovered hip-hop when I was a little young back in the 80s, a movie called Crush Groove. And I remember just watching it and, just being taken by everything that I saw, just what movement was coming out of hip-hop and what was being said as an expression just through dance, through the graffiti, and all the other elements that we here in Zambia at the time weren't exposed to.
The rap was something that I decided to connect to, basically because now I could connect the personality of the music with somebody who was stylish and with swag and all those elements, and somebody that you could look up to who could personify what the music was all about.
So that kind of took me aback, and I knew at that point that at some point I wanted to express myself the same way, but in my own way.
I hooked up with John Kalambata in grade 9, and he introduced me to another guy called Kumoyo. And Kumoyo was like really into Run DMC, Cool G Rap, Run DMC, Big Daddy Kane, Paris. And the first time I met him was like, hey dude, do you know this guy called Paris? I'm like, Paris? Like, okay. So that's the kind of like the first time I was like introduced to hip hop.
Hip hop it made me feel cool, it was different from the pop musics of this world that were done by people like Michael Jackson. So hip hop gave a different perspective and a different way of doing music.
I remember I was very young in Chingola. I was still at school. And we went for a variety show. By then I was a dancer until I watched some certain guys who performed a hip-hop song called Jump by Criss Cross. And after watching the video, I became inspired and I wanted to be like those boys.
I was pretty young. I had an older brother. He was really into hip-hop. I think it influenced my whole musical knowledge because he was into the Run DMCs, LL Cool J's, all those rap guys that were there. That's when I first got introduced to hip-hop.
The roots of Zambian hip-hop run deep, and its story begins with a global influence. American hip-hop left an indelible mark on the youth of Zambia in the late 80s and early 90s. Many watched music videos, listened to hip-hop on radio, and were inspired by friends who had traveled to the United States.
Hip-hop in Z, what can I say? I mean, it's the future. It's the future and the present.
My first experience in studio, my question to you is what studio? Because we didn't have studios, but what we did early days in 1986, like when I did my first recording, is that we figured out that if you had a double tape player, which had a tape A and tape B, you could put a tape with an instrumental in tape A to record onto tape B, because that's what those cassette players used to do. They used to duplicate tapes
The first recording that I did, funny enough, was in 1987. I won't say how old I was. Okay, well, I was 12. And, it was in a home stereo system. We somehow found out that we could record our voices onto it. And we had an instrumental of some African song by a guy called Wally Badaru. It was a famous song in its day. And we put a rap on it, and it sounded good. So it was the first hint of us trying to do some Afrofusion. And that was cool. So I was 12 then, and now 30 years old, sheesh.
Back in the day, I don't know if it's the design of the headphones back then, but you could rap into the headphone and that would act as your microphone. So we didn't have microphones, but we're using headphones as microphones for the longest time, and it worked.
I met TK Romacide, and he was like, yo, I saw you on a rap battle in Northmead. I'd love you to come and, meet the other guys. And they had a group called True For Real. And True For Real were doing some stuff at Litovia Studios, and they said, like, let's hook up. Getting in a studio and you're like, wow, I'm actually doing stuff in a studio. It's the first time I ever saw a computer with a backtrack and everything. So it's like you're all sweating like that, like you're all nervous. I didn't do the weed because the other guys went out to do weed and take drinks and everything. I was sober as a church mouse, so I was a bit nervous, but it worked out well.
I was a rapper that turned DJ.
Naughty trades and braids and Rastafarian. When I come to whip, they made a 4-1 in a million. Nasty Zambian, I'm ripping like the razor. Cripping up Maria, don't today I rearranger.
I actually started DJing before I went to college at high school with a friend of mine called James. And they used to have a club unit called Beehive. But it wasn't serious. It was, just kind of mucking around with the turntables and trying to figure out what the sounds sounded like and how they came out. But when I moved to the UK, that's when I knew I wanted to do it professionally, when I started doing these college parties.
Back in the day, the days of TK Romacide, the days of Master Flow, there were a lot of people were recording. I used to move to a lot of studios and, I would find material recorded.
You're actually doing big things. Let me just take you to the booth and you see what's happening in there. Let's
go.
Follow me.
And it's like there was no one to play that. So I decided to, start playing music. Of course, it was difficult. I met a gentleman called Greg Mack. Greg Mack is the person that gave me an opportunity to do Hip Hop to Rock Your Block.
Welcome to Hip Hop to Rock Your Block, the show with a street passion.
I just started putting stuff together, designing the show, how it's going to go, the segments and everything else. Greg gave me that opportunity, and to date, I'm grateful for that.
I just joined a group where we were doing a genre called Zambezi music, which was different from hip hop. And I wanted to create Zambezi hip hop. I think it was challenging because I was working with Nare Bombana abantu abarista understand different music from hip hop. At the end of the day, I think we nailed it. That's when Wanjewele Uleisa came out. Takuri bambi mwandi wemkache andi wemu nandi ngo mubiri wandi ngefo chari chibe ngefo mwandi ndakufuluka gero winsula wikamfunya mwechi mwela ngefo nakula tukekala. But to my surprise and to their surprise, Yasafuma 1 week later, yapa #1 on Radio Phoenix.
Despite its shaky start, hip-hop in Zambia would go on to create a community of artists that were determined to take on a fresh, artistic expression and change the Zambian music landscape.
So to name drop some game changers in Zambian hip-hop, I would say, and there's always some genre bending, I guess, but Nasty D, Bembalize, Nyanjalais was probably the first Zambian album I owned. He's not strictly speaking a hip-hop artist, but there's definitely some hip-hop in there, and I think he probably influenced quite a few hip-hop artists.
But for a moment, he had defining that Dizima such a poor performance on a show called Sounds Good. Such a poor performance here, a song called Salaula. So nishinajile mfa Salaula, yadisa pusana ko because yadisa bati te fya bafyashi batukanye kumfu efi nomba fya isa pa ZNBC. Then from that point, Nasty D asa drop apo olwimbo ati good milile, which was like in the same line in Asalaula. Those are very good examples of iconic, I don't want to say hip-hop artists, because I think even Daddy Zimas wasn't limited to just hip-hop. I think it was a blend of a bit of dancehall or raga or whatever that was. Then from there again, Nasamfako, the first rap group I ever saw, Zambia. A group of guys calling themselves
the Rap Prophets, where there was George Chiwango, rest in peace, and Desh, who is currently in Netherlands.
Okay, hip hop.
I remember when I met Crisis, he was a year ahead of me. You know, there was a time when we had a variety show, and then Crisis mimed Natural Born Killers, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, and then my crew performed Nothing But a G-Thang, Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. From nowhere, Crisis was in the paper with his Untamed clique. We knew from that time that something was cooking.
Crisis was one of the first hip hop artists that at least me and my friends knew about, that dropped a Zambian hip hop artist that was like in the stores, you know.
I think the one person that was more prominent that we were listening to was Brio, Prince of Chelstone, Brio, Crisis, Diamond Chain, Roy's 5'4", man. Roy the 5'4", yeah. Like, there were people that I felt I sounded like or sounded like me.
The artist that was signed to Diamond Chain, after that whole John Woo, Ray Grams, Monique, all those guys was Exile at that time, who are on that label, was like defining for me, because it was the first time that I had seen commercial appeal in Zambian hip hop. Like, Officer in Charge had records with JK, it had records with big artist names already. You know what I mean? It also had like video representation. That for me was very pivotal. I was like, this is possible, because prior to that I'd been looking at it as just something to play with or toy with.
Local artists at the time, we had Tommy D. I think no one used to tell stories like Tommy D at the time. Black Muntu at the time were very commercial and they were on radio, you know. They were big.
Oh, Cipher music, that was a whole new different story. You know, Cipher was a squad of very energetic young people. The person who brought Cipher together, who had this dream, we all had the dream, but the person who had the muscle and the money to try to do it was late Chila Penza. Chila Penza was into this music like no man's business. He had the financial muscle and he reached out to all his boys. By the way, Chila was my best friend and my nephew at the same time. I mean, we were probably like 22, 23, and we decided to make a movement. And when that movement began, it was quite controversial. No one was ready for any other music like hip hop or anything in Zambia. No one was ready for it. I was the A&R for Cipher music. I was the guy who would deal with all the artists. I was the guy who would market the artists. I traveled the world trying to market artists from Cipher music. We had a very big roster. They used to call us the Wu-Tang. Or some of the artists worked under Cipher. But I can mention a few names. Like for instance, like Exile. When Exile came to the studio, he had his boy Changstar. So those were one of the our cream. Then we had Red Linso, even people who do R&B or whatever, they could be hip hop. So what we had on our label, we had Ronell, we had Killer Beast used to come to the studio. Well, we had a group called Tia Maluchi Cartel, which was my boy Freddie Banknotes, Humphrey, and all those guys that were involved. We had a roster of so many artists who came through the studio, so many. Cactus Agony, he was part of the Cipher journey.
It's real. The story behind the music is real as what you say on the phone to the next person.
Hip hop that time was really, I miss those days, man. I miss my crew. I really miss the guys.
There is no doubt the US is the origin of hip-hop, but when geographically dislocated, it has produced hip-hop subcultures all over the world. This is also evident in Zambian hip-hop.
Cipher started. So as we were going along, they said, look, can we introduce a new segment called, for hip-hop, we called it the Sizzling Spits. It was like a competition and rappers came through. It gave people a platform. When Cipher came through, we had, at the time, those people who were like starting out or almost getting there in the industry. We had Slap D, we had Peterson, we had Mag 44, and we had Campster. So, and Crisis. Very important, because Crisis at the time was one of the only hip-hop people in Zambia, hip-hop artists, who used to rap in English. And that was a problem at the time, because it was like, it's English hip-hop, it's not Zambian. So it was not accepted at the time, because if you're going to do hip hop and if it's going to be Zambian, it has to be in vernac.
When I was championing, and I think based on influences such as I'd been listening to in the world of hip hop and guys like Michael Jackson who were using Manu Dibango hooks, I kind of thought there was a way in which you could balance things.
The music industry was blowing up with the Mando music, and there was the JKs and them, and they were singing the R&B, and they were singing obviously in vernacular and stuff like that. And then here comes Crisis with his rap in English, and we're saying, look, this is not Zambian because Kalindula is in vernac and that's our thing. So as long as he's rapping in English, no. But it was real. It was real. The public, we were not ready to accept English hip hop as Zambian.
I was trying to get into an industry where most of the rappers were rapping in English. There were very few people who rapped in vernac.
I came up at a time when not many people were doing vernacular. They were not doing it commercially, except Master Flow before me, Black Moon too. They called it Kalifunku. For me, I thought I wanted to do something different by adding the same vibe on English raps, only do it in vernac.
Seeing artists like Nasty D, Daddy Zimas, Chululemba, Tommy D.
There were guys like Keith Mutale, obviously Black Moon too, Shimasta, I can't forget the Godfather. That's one of my favorite rappers to date. Shimasta was and still is a god in the game. Small G, by the way.
That was like the first type of hip hop that I felt was made in Zambia that I could really feel like I can relate to this. This is our own people doing it in a way that's more relatable.
If you're going to be talking about Z hip hop, you have to be talking about stuff that affects and reflects the lifestyle in Zambia. You talk about stuff that people in Zambia can relate to. You know what I mean? That's hip hop.
Shiva slap dizi wa mashoka ba DJ babika na beat paka to play kuka Venture DJ wali na bupia Debu pa kulanga nwebo heta wisi mukulia Dance floor at the post sangwapo.
Local hip hop wasn't like, the coolest thing. But I think artists that made it cool were definitely, I would say J.O.B., Chef 187 did that in a major way, and Zone Fam. And they made local rap extremely cool. Like anyone, doesn't matter where you're from, you wanted to listen to local rap.
So Macky 2, Crisis, Slap D, these are the people who I feel really, really open doors, and they need the love. We need to give them the flowers now.
How the Macky 2 and Slap D beef changed the hip-hop landscape for Zambia is in many very different ways. I think for the first time, people were united in division because everybody was looking to see who was going to outdo the other one.
At the time it happened, I thought it was childish, personally.
No, man, that was cool. I have got no problem. That's what hip-hop is all about.
But I think there's always those things that spark up the industry.
Hip-hop, you try out yourself. It's like boxing. If you are the baddest puncher in boxing, even the next guy wants to come and punch you.
And that was an interesting paradox because a lot of the times people gathered to debate two different artists like they were debating two soccer teams.
It was necessary. The beef was necessary for hip-hop. That was a turning point for hip-hop, definitely.
Some of my best work was made because I felt the pressure. But it's not
It was beautiful, man. Like, those things are great for hip-hop. Always great for hip-hop. Like, hip-hop is a contact sport. You know, it's a very competitive sport. So whenever things like that happen, it brings out the best in both artists. And I'd witnessed prior to that the Slap D and Mumpy situation and how that had made like two of the biggest artists in the country.
I always say, my friends were like, why did you have to mention his name at the award show? Look now, he's killing us.
That beef changed everything. Because now, if you want to talk about music, you are either talking about Slap D or Macky 2. I think that really made people now give an ear to other hip-hop artists who were doing, who had skill.
But that's show business. That's what it is. It's like politics. Nothing is personal. It's just a business. You have to grow it. You have to show who is who. Fight it. That's all.
The beef itself was tense. I won't even lie to you. It was tense that, you know, going for performances, I needed to have like backup of about 20 guys with me. And at that time, I had, you know, boys who were ready to stab someone for me.
And I thought that was a great thing for hip-hop because at some point in Zambia, we weren't talking about, you know, the quality of music or the type of music or whether or not it was a specific genre. We were talking about two artists and what they represented, which was hip-hop. That was great.
Slap D and Macky 2 beef now completely made hip-hop music the #1 genre in Zambia for at least the past 15 years.
It's opened doors for the copper belt. You know, a lot of people. You've got the Shefi now. You've got all these guys from the copper belt. If it wasn't for MK, I don't think there would be. Respect to the PS, Pilato. The whole entire Kopala Swag team was based on that.
From that beef emerged Chef 187. You know what I mean? That famous Kuhel Ninemembala verse of his. So like beef has always been, or competition rather, friendly competition, has always been a great motivator in hip hop, you know, for MCs to prove their point.
But then another you know, set of lens was like, is this something that the two have orchestrated to help their careers? And if that's the case, this is awesome. It's really going to help them with their careers. And I guess only the two of them can tell us what the truth is.
You know, you reached the point where somebody got stabbed because of our beef. Yeah. And you know, I don't know, I can't remember who called who. And we just like, yo, we need to squash this. Yeah. Because it's getting out of hand. And I was like, yo, before we squash this, can we make some money off it?
But then for me, it was like, we can't just squash this without making money off it. So we went on pretending to have beef while, you know, making some money off it. And most people, like even some of my team players, didn't know that.
Still competing with him, but I'm making music that, you know, we can all vibe to.
What really was the turning point is when somebody got stabbed in Chingola. For me, that was you need to stop this point.
Today, A new generation of Zambian hip-hop artists is carrying the torch forward, infusing their unique styles and messages into the genre.
Zambian hip-hop today, love it. Love that we have a new wave that is challenging, traditional styles of doing hip-hop. I mean, you have Zamrock hip-hop, which I do, and bringing traditional Zambian music with hip-hop music and merging that together, I think is beautiful, because not only are you saying you're inspired by hip-hop, but you're saying, as a Zambian, this is my take on the genre. And you're pushing to be unique as well. I don't think it was ever a thing for hip-hop artists to sound like each other.
The current Zambian hip-hop is doing better commercially than it was 15, 17, 20 years ago.
It has become lucrative to be a rapper. Not for everyone, of course. But I mean, like, when you say you want to be a rapper, you're just doing it like as a passion. You're not trying to make anything out of it. But now, you almost need to be a bit of a rapper, even if you're a singer or R&B artist. You needed to have that sort of hip hop persona.
A lot of the music that we have right now, which is blowing up, is NRC music. It's very good for inside of Zambia, but it doesn't bleed across. And I juxtaposed that with what I was calling passport music, which is music that bleeds across the borders of Zambia, stuff that people accept regardless of where they are geographically. And I think if I look at the music now and the way things have unfolded, there's a lot more NRC music than there is passport music, and I'd hoped it would be the other way around, but it is what it is. So I think there's still a healthy balance, because you've got people who are flying the torch high internationally, Sampa the Great being, I think, our greatest torch bearer in terms of hip hop, and then locally you've got people who are doing incredibly well.
I think Zambian music has progressed. It's right at the door of worldwide recognition. That's the goodness of saying Zambia Kochalo, power of the tongue.
Hip hop has morphed into different cultures. I mean, if you look at the things that groups like Chandana K are doing, where it's still rap, but there is the copper belt culture. It's almost being used as a tool to bring out cultures of neighborhoods, to bring out cultures of cities. If you look at what J Cash and what Dismo are doing, like, they are representing Matero. They are representing the culture of their neighborhood.
People that I think are making phenomenal music right now. Top of my mind, 76 Drums comes to mind. Like, he's such a breath of fresh air for Zambian hip hop. I mean, there's always critic every day, twice a Sunday.
I'm proud of the ladies that have come in. Javan, the Kopala Queen, is killing it. Cleo Ice Queen has been running in the Bombshell. That's one good thing for hip-hop. We need a balance.
I feel like, as women, there's different versions of us that can be expressed through hip-hop. And I love seeing all those different versions.
We're creating an industry where consumers have, wide range of what they can take. There's an artist like Killer, there's an artist like Macky 2, there's an artist like Sampa, there's an artist like Cleo, there's an artist like me. You name it, you know what I mean?
Or two of those artists that I'm very proud of, and I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to be biased or anything. I think Omusepela Chile came through with a very different feel. He's a very good storyteller. And we're trying everything as headphone music not to water him down. We're trying to make sure that we keep him as hip-hop as possible.
One of the biggest new wave artists right now is hip-hop, Dismo.
Dismo has done amazing things in Lusaka and just in the country itself.
And you could tell, like, this kid has found himself. He's not trying to be like anybody else, and that's just amazing.
And I think Dismo is one of those that are going to be the biggest names. That's if ever the big artists retire.
I'm most proud of consumer diversity.
I would say I'm most proud of the fact that it's still managing to survive, although there are other genres that are trying to push it out the way.
One thing ningabafe proud about Zambian hip hop nalandati the way it's managed to stay relevant for 10 plus years. Kwadiba like a genre ingesa like yaisa, but it hasn't stood the test of time. So that we shibe genre yaisa abantu ngabakula vibe even after 2 years. But for hip hop, Zambian hip hop yadichta stand the test of time.
I am most proud of how hip hop has given a voice to people that otherwise wouldn't have a voice. You know, and in Zambia alone, for instance, there's a lot of people that, you know, they've come from a background where they weren't given a fair shake in life. They didn't have the facilities to be able to take them to school. They didn't have the comfort levels that other people might have had to have 3 meals, you know, a day.
I'm still proud of the fact that my contribution remains from times like when I was 17. I wrote a song that was the first song on radio to have vernacular Zambian lyrics and English mixed in there to get radio airplay. And that's a song that I wrote when I was 16 or 17 years old or so, called Zambia Moto, and it's still, you know, available to download, and you can hear a young me vocally doing his thing. And so I'm proud of things like that. I'm proud of the fact that we were pioneers in this movement with other, you know, people trying to be almost like evangelists about hip hop and about rap.
All the albums that I put my blood, sweat, and tears in, that for me is my proudest contribution to the Zambian hip hop fraternity, because it's something you can go and listen to. And also, just to be fair, I'm proud of all the rappers in Zambia who have contributed something to the culture. You know, all the DJs, all the B-boys, the lesser known parts of hip hop, like the graffiti artists. Right now, Lusaka is looking beautiful because there's graffiti artists that roll around doing that. You know, the break dancers, the DJs have been so phenomenal at breaking this music and selflessly putting out acts. You know, like the Holstar has been one of those people who put most of us in magazines before we even knew how to get on that. You know, he would not even bother calling you, or like, you know, you just find yourself in a hype magazine. I found myself in a hype magazine. I was like, how did this happen?
Hip hop has become highly influential. I mean, now your biggest brand ambassadors, your biggest brands are partnering with hip hop artists, which was never the case. Now you almost can't do an event without having a hip-hop artist, whether it's gospel or secular.
If you look at it like that, I think it's a lot of progress that's been made. I think to get consumers to this point where they can accept a different face to what hip-hop would be, I think there's a lot of progress that's been made.
Over the next 5 to 10 years, the evolution of Zambian hip-hop, I feel like it still has, it hasn't reached its peak. Because I know we're not the only ones who are experimenting. There's others adding some rock to what they're doing.
I'll take note of what you hate. I'll get rid of that with so much love you failed to calculate.
So still, I feel like it still has some height to climb.
Our space as Zambian artists and hip-hop artists is not in sounding American. And I think the future really depends on how we express our culture uniquely, because the rest of the world, everybody has experienced American hip-hop. They're yet to experience the African hip-hop.
Like all genres in the Zambian music industry, we have immense potential to reach the world and give a different take in music that hasn't been heard before.
Our value as artists, our value as hip-hop artists, our value as creative is in our ability to express ourselves in a way that we can only express ourselves.
Of course, there's a lot for us to learn. I think from an artistic perspective, I think Zambian artists need to have the freedom to be able to create without the pressure of having to sound like the last guy that had a big hit.
The uniqueness of a hip-hop act is in their interest in telling their own story. Right? When you're a hip-hop act that sounds like somebody else, that moves like somebody else, or that is taking up the storyline of somebody else, it's going to be very difficult for you to be noticed.
And I think we just have to emphasize the element of authenticity.
I feel like Zambian stories are very unique and very deep and very nuanced. And if we could just tell more of them, you know, in a more palatable manner, I believe that there can be more identity in our hip hop acts.
This is no longer about the Zambian market. It's about the global market.
The only way to grow is to get out of Zambia, is to push this style of music that we have created, this culture of Zambian hip hop, and take it to the rest of the world.
There's a lot of things that have to like be done for us to get back to the glory days of hip hop music in Zambia.
The business side of hip hop, I think we need to look into that so that we can own everything as Zambia.
I feel like someone who's taking many steps towards that is Sampa the Great. I mean, she's going out there being nominated for BETs and collabing with Lauryn Hill and doing all these crazy things. And I think that is the next step for hip hop.
The future of Zambian hip hop is in bravery, right? We're gonna have to be brave. And by that I mean we're gonna have to experiment a lot. Like, for instance, I really love what Sampa the Great is doing.
I'm proud that I was part of a moment that showed Zambian hip hop globally. I mean, never forget, did things I didn't even think it was gonna do. Being part of Black Panther is something that no one in the country has ever done, but something that I think really excited everyone. It made us feel seen, even me as the artist.
Me using hip hop to speak as a tool for social change was as a result of what I'd interrogated as an individual as to what would I do if I was the most powerful individual on earth. If I was to be the most powerful person, I want to transmit power. I want to empower as many people as possible. If I was the most powerful person on earth, the first thing I want to do is empower the weak. And I think music was that too for me, because I knew that somebody's listening to me. There is a group of people that are listening to me. And if people were listening to me, what was my message? If the president was to listen to my music, what's my message? If decision makers are listening to my voice, what is it that I'm saying? I would empower people. I would empower those around me. I would empower those that have been ignored and marginalized. And I think music was that power. And I used my music to speak my concerns, to speak my fear, to express my hope, but most importantly, to share what I felt was critical for the development of humanity.
What I'd like to see in this evolution is maybe taking it a step back and looking at where it's come from, and if we can maybe get that essence, that authenticity, that storytelling, that poetry and that rhythm that it originated with, even as we evolve, if it could incorporate that, I think that would be great.
The next step for hip hop in Zambia is that we need to take it out and move it away from the walls of the borders of Zambia and make it an export.
I want to see kind of more commercial opportunities available for Zambian hip-hop artists and Zambian musicians in general, especially younger ones.
It's about something that's bigger than me. So now I'm in a space where I'm just like creating to leave something that's a legacy. I would like to say, big up to the cats like Chef 187, who dropped like a record-breaking album. I know Tim also just dropped another record-breaking album. But there's several other artists that are also just as great, if not can even be greater. That's not even to throw shade, but it's about, raising up the next generation.
I think that is the future, and that should be the future we should all be looking forward to as Zambian hip-hop artists.
But seldom do we ever institutionalize those things so that when we're no longer there, somebody else can pick up and continue. So, so we have, great artists, but obviously knock on wood, when they're gone, you know, will that translate into the next set of great artists, right? Like, I don't think that we're necessarily thinking very intentionally about that.
Celebrating 50 years of hip hop. Wow.
Hip hop celebrated 50 years, and in the year that it celebrated 50 years, I really appreciated 50-year-old rappers.
Listen, how crazy is it? For a genre that started in the hood, black and brown people, turntables, talking about what's happening to them politically. Everybody said these little kids are making noise. And now that is one of the biggest money earners musically in America. Is that not crazy? That is a big achievement for black people globally. For that to be something that now is around the world, that's really beautiful.
Hip hop is big, hip hop is huge, hip hop is life, hip hop is culture.
Hip hop is not dead, it's alive.
Let's keep it alive, colorful, as vibrant as it's ever been.
As much as hip hop, the genre of hip hop is old, it's 50. We only just started. We should be around, 25 years old, maybe 30 at best. So let's keep pushing and let's keep passing on the baton to the next generation and encouraging the next generation to do better than we did.
Sometimes we just sleeping on the music, we're just sleeping on the artists. If you just pay enough attention, there's a lot of great hip hop. I think for us to grow, we need to look beyond what our greats have done. We need artists who are willing to just even take it further.
I would like to share some information that I think is important for artists to understand. Humility is everything. If you approach your craft from a point of humility, you always have one opportunity to learn something that will make your life different from what it was yesterday. So for me, I think in everything that you do, be it the business nuances regarding your music, be it opportunities, be it networking, always apply, wear your best humble suit, because that's what's going to open doors for you.
Stay humble. Don't burn bridges. You will need them one day. You burn your bridge, you have nowhere to cross from. So stay humble and stay focused. You got one hit, you want to change your lifestyle, change your friends. If you could, you'd probably change your family, but that's not the way. You make money, you stay focused, you make more money.
For all those that have been supporting hip hop, I would like to say thank you so much and continue supporting hip hop.
I just want to say thank you to the people that came before me, the people, even if you've never been recognized on the media or publicly, somewhere or another, you've been a part of the hip-hop movement. You carry the culture, you support the music. To the people that were there before me, I want to say a huge thank you, and keep doing what you do. Congratulations to you, hip-hop. Hip-hop, the love of my life. I love you, so big up to you, 50 years. You're my daddy, hip-hop.